A silent $250,000 gap is opening up beneath your feet right now. By 2026, the average agentic AI engineer is pulling in $216,000, while traditional devs are fighting over the scraps of commoditized roles. This is not about learning a new language, it is about surviving a high stakes fork in the road that most people are completely blind to. Your paycheck in 18 months depends entirely on which side of the AI coding tool war you choose to master today. You are about to see why the choice between Cursor versus Claude Code is actually a choice between being a faster coder or becoming that high earning agentic architect. We are going to dismantle the hybrid workflow that top tier engineers are using to double their output, expose the hidden traps of vibe coding that could kill your career, and hand you the 2026 decision matrix to pick your path. Pay close attention to the end because I am revealing the one document, the Claude.md file, that acts as the brain for large scale projects and stops AI hallucinations dead in their tracks. Most developers are walking into this fight with the wrong mindset. They ask, should I use Cursor versus Claude Code, as if they are picking a favorite sports team? That is a trap. A carpenter does not choose between a hammer and a saw. They use the right tool for the specific moment of the build. Top tier engineers have already moved to the hybrid workflow. They use Cursor for the polish, the UI tweaks, the sub-second autocomplete, and the quick inline edits that keep them in the zone. But when it is time for the heavy lifting, refactoring 10 files at once or building entire test suites from scratch, they switch to Claude Code. One makes you a faster version of yourself, the other makes you the conductor of an entire digital workforce. The danger is that choosing the easier tool today might actually make you obsolete by 2027. If you only learn to hit tab and accept suggestions, you are training to be an editor, not an architect. With 92% of software engineers now using AI assistants, editing is a race to the bottom where the lowest bidder wins. I saw this happen to a developer named Devan. He was the fastest guy on his team using Cursor. He shipped features in hours that used to take days. But when he interviewed for a senior Gen AI role at a major tech firm, he crashed. He had fallen into the vibe coding trap. He could describe features, but he could not orchestrate the architecture. I will tell you exactly where he went wrong in a few minutes. But first, you have to understand why speed is sometimes a lethal trap. Quick question for the comments. What is the biggest code base you have tried to feed an AI assistant so far? Did it handle it or did it start hallucinating? Drop your experience below because I am reading every single one to see which tools are actually holding up in the real world. If you want to understand why the market is obsessed, you have to look at the current king of speed, Cursor 2.6. This tool is the ultimate manifestation of the IDE first philosophy. It does not want you to change how you work. It wants the work to happen at the speed of thought. Imagine you are in the zone, you are building a new UI component, and you are just hitting tab, tab, tab. Features are appearing before you even finish the mental sentence. This is the flow state that Cursor has perfected. It feels like magic because it is deeply integrated into your environment. It knows your folders, your terminal, and your recent edits better than you do. With the 2.6 release, Cursor moved beyond just being a smart autocomplete. They introduced mission control. Think of it like a flight controller dashboard at a busy airport. Instead of managing one cursor on one line of code, you are now monitoring a fleet of parallel agents. You can spin up multiple cloud agents running on dedicated virtual machines to tackle different parts of a feature simultaneously. One agent is refactoring your API calls, another is updating the CSS, and a third is writing the documentation. I have seen developers get drunk on this kind of speed. When you have BugBot Autofix literally repairing pull requests with a single click, the dopamine hit is real. To see the true enterprise power of this, you only have to look at Stripe. They implemented Cursor across their front-end teams specifically to accelerate UI development and API integration. The result was a documented 38% reduction in time to delivery for new features. For a company the size of Stripe, that is worth tens of millions of dollars in engineering hours. Before we go further, you need the right guardrails. I have put together a Claude.md template in the description. It is the exact framework I use to keep agentic workflows from spinning out of control. Grab that now because we are about to look at the math that makes it necessary. This is why the market is willing to pay those high salaries. They are not paying for your typing speed, they are paying for your ability to deliver features in 3 months that used to take 9. But there is a cost to that speed. Cursor pricing model is built for the professional. You have the pro tier at $20 a month, but for the power users running those fleets of agents, there is the ultra plan at $200 a month. It sounds expensive, but as we will see later, it is actually a massive discount compared to raw API costs. But there is a tension building in the developer community. As amazing as Cursor 2.6 is, some engineers are starting to notice a ceiling. You will be flying along at 300 miles per hour, and then suddenly the AI starts to trip over its own feet. It forgets a variable you defined 10 files ago, or it starts hallucinating a library version from 2023. This is the context window gap. Cursor markets a 200,000 token context window, but independent tests from sites like AI Tool Analysis show that internal truncation often reduces that effective reasoning to more like 70 or 100,000 tokens. In a massive enterprise code base, that is the difference between the AI seeing the whole picture or just staring through a keyhole. There is a moment every senior developer hits where fast just stops working. You have been hitting tab, watching the UI components build themselves, and then you hit the wall. You ask the AI to refactor a complex state management logic across 15 different files, and suddenly the magic evaporates. This is where the high earners separate themselves. They realize that while Cursor is the king of the IDE, Claude Code Opus 4.6 is the king of the architecture. Let us look at a number that should honestly scare you if you are paying for your own tokens. Independent research from Builder.io recently uncovered a massive token efficiency gap. For the exact same complex coding task, Claude Code used just 33,000 tokens. Cursor? It burned through 188,000. That is a 5.5 times difference in efficiency. Why? Because Cursor is constantly chattering with your IDE to keep your screen updated, whereas Claude Code uses the compaction API. It is designed to handle massive, million token context windows by intelligently summarizing the conversation history so it never loses the core reasoning of your project. Quick check in. Are you currently paying for a Pro AI plan? Or are you still riding the free tiers? Drop a Pro or free in the comments. I want to see how many of you are already investing in these agents. Think about the logic here. When I first saw Claude Code, I thought, a terminal native tool in 2026? Is not a CLI first approach a step backward? It feels counterintuitive. We have spent decades making IDEs more visual, and here comes Anthropic telling us to go back to a command prompt. But this is the reasoning revolution. When you remove the overhead of a visual editor, the AI is not just suggesting lines of code, it is taking autonomous action. Claude Code does not just show you code, it runs your tests. It installs your NPM packages. It checks your Git status and prepares the commit. It has what Anthropic calls adaptive thinking with 4 distinct effort levels. If you give it a vibe task, it stays fast. But if you give it a mission critical infrastructure change, it slows down, thinks through the architectural implications, and ensures the entire repo stays healthy. Be honest. Have you ever shipped code you did not fully understand just because the AI said it worked? Tell me your vibe coding confession below. This is how early adopters in Anthropic enterprise trials are reporting an average annual savings of $850,000 per company. They are automating the high level refactoring that usually requires a room full of senior architects. If you want to move into that $200,000 salary bracket, you have to stop thinking like a coder and start thinking like an orchestrator. And the core architectural framework for orchestrating Claude is a single file, claude.md. This is a strategy I have been teaching my students to prevent the AI from ever hallucinating outdated library syntax. In the terminal, Claude Code looks for this file to understand your project-specific rules, your architectural patterns, and your testing requirements. It is like giving the AI a permanent memory of your senior architect brain. As I mentioned, you can find my specific template in the description to keep your agentic workflows from spinning out of control. The realization you need to have right now is that Cursor makes you a faster version of a traditional developer, but Claude Code forces you to become an agentic architect. One tool helps you finish your tickets by Friday. The other tool helps you build the system that finishes the tickets for you. But there is a dark side to all this power. If you rely on the vibe without having the vision, you end up in a very dangerous place. You end up like Devon. If you want to stay ahead of this architectural debt curve and actually land those senior roles, hit subscribe. We track these AI shifts every single week to make sure you are building a career, not just a code base. Devon was a cursor wizard. He was the fastest guy on his team, using those cloud agents to ship features in days. He was vibe coding his way to the top, describing a feature in natural language, hitting tab, and watching the AI build the logic. He felt invincible until he walked into an interview for a senior Gen AI architect role. The interviewer did not ask him to write a function. They asked him to explain why his agentic architecture was failing to scale. They asked him how he would handle the architectural debt created by 5 parallel agents writing to the same database schema. Devon realized he could not explain the why behind any of it. He had the speed, but he had lost the vision. He had become an editor of something else's ideas. This is the vibe coding trap. It is the seductive belief that if the code works, you do not need to understand it. But in the world of agentic engineering, it works is not enough. Skeptics are already warning that vibe coding leads to systems that are impossible to maintain because the human in the loop is just a passenger, not the pilot. The tool you choose literally shapes how you think. If you spend all day in Cursor, you are being trained to be a world-class editor. But if you spend your time in Claude Code, you are being forced to think like an architect. Because it is terminal native and autonomous, you have to give it high-level instructions and then verify the system-wide results. Now, do not hear me wrong. Vibe coding is not a career killer if you use the right guardrails. The difference between a vibe coder who gets fired and an agentic architect who gets a 12% salary premium comes down to context management. In Cursor, you use the .cursor rules file to enforce your standards. In Claude Code, you use that claude.md file to define the soul of your project. These files act as the brakes on a car that is going 200 miles per hour. Without them, you are just waiting for a crash. Devon's $100,000 mistake was not using Cursor. It was letting the tool replace his judgment. Here is your challenge for tonight. Open your main project and try to write a claude.md file that explains your architecture to a junior dev. If you cannot explain it, the AI cannot build it. Let me know if you hit a wall. So, here is the moment of truth. You have $200 to spend this month on your career. Where does it go? Do you buy the Cursor Ultra plan or the Claude Code Max tier? Let us look at the math first because it is staggering. If you were to run these agents through a standard API, hitting those billion token limits that heavy professional work requires, you would be looking at a bill of over $3,600 a month. By choosing a $200 max plan, whether it is Cursor versus Claude Code, you are getting 18 times the value. This is a massive arbitrage opportunity for your productivity. But money is only half the equation. You need to align your toolset with the specific job description you want to land. If you are aiming for AI augmented roles at companies like Stripe, where the national average base salary is sitting at $184,000, then Cursor 2.6 is your weapon of choice. It keeps you in the IDE, it keeps you in the flow, and it makes you the fastest version of a traditional developer the world has ever seen. However, if you are looking at those $216,000 agentic AI engineer roles, the ones appearing at Google, SAP, and the major infrastructure players, you need to master Claude Code. These roles are not about writing code in the traditional sense. They are about orchestrating autonomous agents to maintain massive multi-file systems. In these high-stakes environments, reasoning and token efficiency beat autocomplete every single time. My final verdict for 2026: start your hybrid workflow tonight. Use Cursor for the UI polish, the sub-second edits, and the daily grind. But the moment you need to refactor 10 files or build a test suite, move into the terminal with Claude Code. And please, remember the lesson of Devon. Do not let the vibe replace your vision. Download the claude.md template I have linked in the description and use it to define your rules tonight before you let an agent touch a single line of your repo. It is the only way to ensure you are building a legacy instead of a mess. That $250,000 gap is not a theory, it is a deadline. You now have the roadmap, the salary delta, and the exact matrix to choose your future. Do not just pick a tool, pick a destination. Start your first hybrid project tonight, and I will see you in the terminal.